These days, we've really narrowed and focused our mission on document processing and workflows with AI agents. So really kind of like tapping into the massive volumes of data that's within like PDFs and PowerPoints and that kind of stuff, and then be able to automate all the work over time.
Jerry, why don't you kick us off and tell us the inspiration for starting the company?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good question, and I want to say it was intentional, but it was kind of random. So basically, I was just like hacking around on GPT-3 back then, and it was like a kind of everybody was kind of playing around with LLMs at the time. I really wanted to feed like our entire Notion knowledge base into this 4,000 token context window at the time, and then realized we couldn't really do it. And so I basically came up with like this really hacky approach that didn't really work, and then created like a GitHub repo out of that. I put it out on Twitter, and I got a bunch of likes, and then that motivated me to continue iterating on the project. And then VCs started coming inbound like 2 weeks after, and then I decided to turn it into a company. So like long story short, I do think there was like an opportunity. I was very clear we're at the kind of cusp of something truly like transformational. And I've always kind of been in the world of AI and applied research, and so it was a good time.
Great, Han?
Yeah, so I have a very similar experience to Jerry, but I was hacking BERT back in 2019. So I was leading a project back in Tencent. So we were building a WeChat, which is a fork of Elasticsearch. So the whole journey actually started from Elasticsearch. And I was trying to hack Google Query so that the Elasticsearch can somehow support this kind of vector neural-based information retrieval inside Elastic. So I did this as an open source project back in Tencent. It was called Generic Neural Elasticsearch, GNES. And at some point, Tencent decided to move away from that and focus more on the video intelligence, because back in the days it was facing a huge competition from TikTok. There was a lot of FOMO on video recommendation, all this kind of things. And then I kind of feel a little bit like disappointed, right? I say, okay, so but I really like this direction. I really see that applying a neural network into search is kind of the future. So I decided, regardless, I will do this regardless whether I'm Tencent or not at Tencent. So after quit Tencent, I decided to start this as a startup. So this is kind of the origin story of GNES.
It's actually similar. So Galilee started about 4.5 years ago. In February 2021, I was leading product management at Google AI before that, working very closely with the Transformers team, which BERT was going gangbusters at the time, and it was the language model, right? And but what I was seeing was there was a deep level of frustration amongst the developers in my team who were working with BERT to build out these language model-powered applications because of two reasons. One was it was really hard for software engineers to figure out why is this thing not working. It was very non-deterministic. And the second thing was very expensive. All of the capital was basically going to these labeling providers who were coming to us and throwing humans at the problem to figure out what the problems are. So Galilee started out of a place of frustration where I just quit Google and started this research project with some folks at Stanford around helping me deterministically come up with maybe even like metrics and evaluators for language model-powered applications. But as you would imagine, like early 2021, there was no market for this. But more recently, it's great to see this whole wave of AI application developers building with larger language models, but it's much more of an operating system. You don't really have to fine-tune these things anymore. It's like the doctor's death for medical school.
Right.
So it's super exciting to see where you're at right now.
I want to ask three of you, I think something that is on everybody's mind, which is the AI landscape, especially in the last 24 to 36 months, has been evolving very rapidly. It seems like there's a new model, whether it's from closed source vendors or the open source vendors, comes out on a weekly basis. You have to rethink sort of application architectures if you're building AI, and certainly for the three of you, they're supporting developers. I imagine there's a lot of chaos that goes on with this rapid changing landscape. So maybe Rick, you could kick us off. How have you had to think about your own products in a world where the underlying things that you're building on top of are moving so fast?
It's a great question. We actually had to rebuild everything from scratch about 2 years ago, because we have optimized our entire stack for the training problem of language models versus we saw this whole shift towards inference, number one. Number two, we saw this whole shift towards a new stack coming up. So, you know, the frameworks of today may or may not be the frameworks of tomorrow. We knew that the cloud providers would also come in and they were going to provide frameworks as well. So all of this is going to change. So the big shift that we made was everything has to be modular. All the way from how you log stuff, everything has to be super modular and extremely developer friendly. The product itself, for us, everything's about logging, metrics, insights, and then just completing the loop to give you, to fix things for you. Everything has to be super, super modular. So that's a core tenet of what we do.
And do you separate the teams based on those modules? How do you architect a team to support that much sort of like,
yeah, it's
maybe siloed nature?
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. So for us, we have pods of literally up to 3 people in teams, and we try not to have more than 3 people. And it's based on each of these different parts of the module. So they can ship fast. And our KPI for this is if there's a new model that comes out, there's a new framework that comes out, can we ship the integration for that with less than 24 hours with really good robust documentation. And if you can't, then we go back into a retrospective on like why that happened.
That's great. Good question to you. How have you architected the product to respond to this?
Yeah, I think it's a very deep question. Like this is a question that still like chase me every day. Like you know, so GenAI was founded in 2020, so that was before all this hype generative AI things. And we originally like I think there's 3 pivot moments of GenAI. Right? The first pivot moment is actually Google Bird. Right? So without Google Bird, I won't start even to think about starting a company about neural search. And then, but things goes a little bit slow between 2020 to 2022, right? Because of COVID, all this kind of thing. I think the focus of the world is about COVID, and it's not only generative AI stuff, right? But at the end of 2022, there is a pivot moment that is the ChatGPT release, right? And after that, search, RAG, right? So start to become a new paradigm in this, you know, when you develop a search system. So this is actually hit us a lot. Right? So we decide to think about our strategy, you know, whether we still focus on cloud native orchestration things, or we decide to kind of pivot into a more like a RAG and more research related stuff. Back in the days, internally we have 2 strategies running in parallel. I call it like a fast strategy and a thin strategy. So fast strategy is a kind of like model based, right? So we train like we really want to build a retrieval model as a mode of the company, and then we put in GPU, all this kind of things to train a very good retrieval model. The other thin strategy is like to become a rapper. Not musical rapper, but it's like rapping on top of the large language model stuff, right? So you want to optimize the user experience, you know, all this kind of stuff. But at some point in 2024, like for over a year in 2023, I mean 2023 was a disaster year, right? For us, it's like really chaotic. Like inside the company, there was many fight going on here and there. And but in 2024, I decided, okay, so we don't do like a UX anymore, because I realized that none of our backend engineers are interested in moving the buttons, you know, padding margins, changing the colors of the button here and there. And so we decided to like completely focus on the double down on the model training part, right? So we decided to work on the embedding model, regression models, and especially we work on open weights, open source models. So every model we write, we develop, we are really serious about this. So we publish a paper, benchmark it, fight against all these competitors in the market. And the time goes, I think we are getting used to it. So challenge accept. So it's a part of the startup learning. I think the third pivot moment is this year in February, right? During the Chinese Spring Festival, there's a DC R1 release, right? So after that, a lot of people realize that search is not about speed anymore. It's not about how you optimize the quantization, all this kind of thing. It's about the quality. It's about how deep the search result can be, right? How many aha moments you can get for the users, right? The user has to be really shocked mentally, right, after seeing your search result, right? So then we realized that so the retrieval model is also facing a kind of paradigm shift, now becoming a small tools that can be used by those large language models. So those are I think the 3 pivot moments for all companies.
And did you change how your team is structured in that chaos?
No.
So how was your team structured? Now that you're part of Elastic, you're part of a much bigger team, but
I think one thing I learned is you have to be very lean and mean of the team, right? So I think after that, you really focus on the work with